Goodness gracious, everybody! It's been a little while, been a little hot minute, but we're here for a very special occasion. You see, I was recently reached out by one of the excellent storytellers that I've narrated before, with one of his stories, and well, he wrote a book. He had so many stories, he decided to do a horror anthology book. That book is called Where the Streetlight Ends. Oh, sorry, my green screen technology is like, I'm not showing that. I don't know why. I do apologize. But yes, Where the Streetlight Ends. And our author, here with us today, Mr. Bradley Butts. Bradley, my goodness gracious, man, you made so many stories. You've written a horror anthology. How does that feel, dude? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's exciting. Like, I've been writing short stories for a few years now. Like, I really enjoy short stories in general, like just getting that exhilarating quick run to the finish. Like, you don't have time to breathe. Like, sometimes they're horrific, sometimes they're exhilarating, like, or thrilling. So always like that. And after a while, like, I've had so many that I've put out online in, like, under a pseudonym on, like, things like Reddit or Twitter and stuff like that, to where I got some feedback, I've got some praise, and I was like, you know what, let me put some of them out there, like, with my name on them officially. So naturally, I picked my 10 favorites. So I still have a bunch more. Maybe I'll do an anthology later. I don't know. But these are my favorites.
Excellent. Well, that's yet again part of what we're here to do. We're going to go ahead and do a live reading of one of these excellent stories in the book that you can buy. By the way, you can buy today. We will cover that a little bit later, but there are links in the description below for Barnes & Noble and Amazon if you want to, beat me to it. You're more than welcome to. I'm not going to stop you. And we're going to go ahead and change over to a little bit more atmospheric. You know what we really need, Bradley? We need a little bit of a campfire setting. There we go.
Oh yeah,
that's nice. That's excellent. Oh, look at that. Get a little bit of campfire noise in the background. It's very dark outside. Hopefully nothing spooky appears, but no promises. Am I right? So we're going to go ahead and read The Beckoning Call of Black Hollow. The email had been innocuous, almost offensively bland. Remote land surveyor needed. Appalachian region. Competitive rates. It was from a Black Hollow Forestry, a name I'd never encountered in my decade of freelancing. Not unusual. New outfits popped up, old ones folded. The pay was good. Almost too good for what sounded like a standard week-long gig. Hike in, take soil samples, GPS mark some potential logging zones, hike out. Easy money, as I'd cavalierly told myself. The kind of money that helped smooth over the lean months between contracts. The kind that kept my increasingly threadbare existence from unraveling completely. My life had become a series of solitary expeditions. A deliberate retreat from a lot of things. From the pitying looks after Sarah left, from the suffocating expectations of a life I no longer fit into, from the four walls of an apartment that felt more like a cage. Out in the wilderness, there was a clarity, a brutal honesty. The challenges were tangible. A steep incline, a sudden storm, the primal fear of a bear encounter. These were things I could understand, things I could prepare for, things I could, usually, overcome. Each successful job was a small victory, a reaffirmation that I could still navigate, still endure. I trekked through Alaskan tundra, mapped sweltering stretches of the Everglades, and charted forgotten islands off the Pacific coast. The Appalachians, even an uncharted section, felt like a walk in the park by comparison. The correspondence with Black Hollow Forestry was sparse, conducted through a generic email address. No phone calls, no video chats, just brief, typed instructions and a set of coordinates. They wanted specific strata samples, detailed timber density readings, and notations on any unusual geological formations. Standard stuff. The only slightly odd request was for me to rely solely on a provided radio for communication. My satellite phone and personal locator beacon were, they insisted, unnecessary and potentially disruptive to sensitive local wildlife. I'd raise an eyebrow at that, but the allure of the paycheck, nearly double the going rate, was a powerful sedative for my skepticism. Besides, I'd worked in more remote locations with less support. The preparation was routine. I checked my gear, tent, sleeping bag ready for below freezing, water filter, first aid kit, dehydrated meals. I packed my surveying equipment meticulously. GPS unit, clinometer, soil auger, Sample bags. Waterproof notebooks. The company hadn't provided any specialized gear, which was a point in their favor for normalcy. I informed my emergency contact, my perpetually worried younger sister Emily, of my general location. Or what I thought was my general location. And the expected duration. Just another walk in the woods, Em, I'd said, trying to sound reassuring. Cell service will be nil, but I'll have the radio. Don't worry. Her silence on the other end had been heavy with unspoken anxieties. Oof, give me a sec there. The helicopter that arrived to pick me up from the small, dusty airfield wasn't from any commercial fleet I recognized. It was an older model, matte black with no identifying markings, save for a faded, almost invisible insignia near the tail rotor that I couldn't quite make out. The pilot was a wiry man, his face a roadmap of jagged scars, his eyes like chips of flint. He moved with a tense efficiency, his gaze constantly scanning, as if expecting trouble from any quarter. He didn't introduce himself, just grunted and gestured towards the chopper. The flight itself was unnervingly silent, aside from the thumping roar of the rotors. He didn't offer small talk, and my attempts were met with monosyllabic answers that discouraged further interaction. We flew for what felt like hours, the landscape below transforming from rolling foothills dotted with farms and small towns into an increasingly dense and unbroken ocean of trees. The mountains grew steeper, the valleys deeper and shadowed. No roads, no trails, not even the faintest wisp of smoke from a chimney. Just wilderness, raw and untamed. As we approached the coordinates, the terrain became even more forbidding, a chaotic jumble of peaks and ravines that seemed to actively resist human intrusion. The pilot brought the helicopter down at a small rocky clearing, barely large enough for the skids. The wind whipped fiercely around us, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and something else. Something acrid and unfamiliar that prickled the back of my throat. He didn't cut the engine, the blades churning the air into a frenzy as I hauled my pack out and stepped onto the uneven ground. "You sure you want to do this?" he shouted over the roar, his eyes, for the first time, showing a flicker of something other than detached professionalism. He might have been concern, or perhaps a morbid curiosity. "Yeah," I yelled back, forcing a confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Just a week of peace and quiet. Get some good data. Enjoy the solitude." He didn't laugh. He didn't even crack a smile. His scarred face remained grim. Instead, he reached into a pocket of his flight vest and pulled out a battered old brass compass, the kind my grandfather used to own. He shoved it into my hands, his callous fingers surprisingly strong. "Your GPS won't work past sundown," he said, his voice flat, almost a warning. "Signal interference out here. Too many magnetic deposits, or so they say. This will. Use this to get out. Stick to true north when it's time. Don't deviate." He leaned closer, his voice dropping, though still needing to be loud. "And if you hear anything at night, anything that calls to you, don't answer it. Don't even acknowledge it. You understand?" Before I could ask what the hell he meant by that, what kind of anything he was referring to, he'd straightened up, given a curt nod, and was already lifting the collective. The helicopter ascended with an almost desperate urgency. The downdraft nearly knocked me off my feet. Within moments, it was a rapidly shrinking speck against the bruised purple of the late afternoon sky, then gone. The silence that descended was absolute, heavier than any I'd ever experienced. It pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I was alone. Truly alone. Black Hollow. It wasn't on any of my topographical maps. Not under that name, anyway. I triple-checked before leaving. A shiver, unrelated to the cooling air, traced its way down my spine. Oof. Felt a burp there, sorry. The pilot's words echoed in my mind. Don't answer it. The first day, or what was left of it after the drop-off, was dedicated to setting up a base camp and getting my bearings. The trees here were ancient, gnarled giants that dwarfed any I'd seen in other parts of the Appalachians. The bark was a deep, almost blackish green, and thick, velvety moss clung to them like a shroud. Many didn't quite match the species I was familiar with. Their leaves were subtly different in shape. Their wood a darker, denser grain where visible. The roots were the most disturbing. Massive black serpentine things that writhed across the forest floor and delved deep into the earth, looking more like colossal exposed veins than parts of the tree. The air was heavy, damp, and carried an undercurrent of decay that wasn't just the usual scent of decomposing leaves. It was richer, sweeter, almost cloying. I followed my pre-planned survey route, a looping transect designed to cover a representative section of the designated area. The work was mechanical, a comforting routine. Find a suitable spot, clear away the surface debris, auger down for soil samples at different depths, bag them, label them. Then take timber measurements, assess tree health, note species. The deeper I ventured into Black Hollow, the more pronounced the unsettling atmosphere became. The forest floor was eerily quiet. Few birds sang, and the usual chatter of squirrels and insects was conspicuously absent. It was as if the smaller creatures knew to stay away, or had been driven out. It was during my second transect line that I found the first anomaly. Not just strange trees, but bones. In a small mossy dell, sheltered by a cluster of those dark-veined rooted trees. I found the scattered skeleton of a white-tailed deer. Nothing unusual about that. Predator kills were common. But this was different. The bones were unnaturally clean, almost polished, and there were no teeth marks, no signs of gnawing. The ribcage was splayed open with a peculiar symmetry, and the skull was missing. Later that afternoon, I found an elk skull, massive and bleached, wedged at least 30 feet up between the branches of a thick, twisted oak-like tree. There was no way it could have gotten there naturally. No predator could have carried it so high, and the tree itself offered no easy purchase for climbing. It looked placed, deliberately. Further on, I stumbled upon a deer trail, winding through the dense undergrowth. In the very center of the path, laid out almost ritualistically, was another ribcage. This one from a smaller animal, perhaps a fox or a large raccoon. It was split down the sternum and picked clean, just like the deer. My unease began to curdle into a more active sense of dread. This wasn't normal predator behavior. This felt intelligent, malevolent. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised violet, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The shadows lengthened, merging the already dark trees into an amorphous wall of black. True to the pilot's warning, my GPS unit, which had been behaving erratically all afternoon, flickered one last time, displaying a garbled string of characters, and died. The screen went blank, unresponsive to any button press. My backup GPS did the same. Even my digital watch, usually a reliable companion, was displaying the wrong time, the seconds hand jumping erratically. I wasn't overly worried at first. I had the compass, a map I'd sketched based on the initial coordinates, and my tent was already pitched in a small, defensible clearing near a stream. I built a modest fire, more for psychological comfort than for warmth. The air, though cool, wasn't frigid. I ate my rehydrated chili back, trying to rationalize the strange findings of the day. Perhaps some unknown fungal disease was affecting the animals, causing strange behavior before death. Perhaps there was a local, unrecorded scavenger with peculiar habits. My mind, trained in scientific observation, scrabbled for logical explanations. But a cold knot of fear was tightening in my gut. Excuse me. The fire crackled, spitting embers into the encroaching darkness. The sounds of the forest at night began to emerge. The hoot of a distant owl, the rustle of leaves from some small unseen creature, the creak of branches in the slight breeze. Normal sounds. Comforting sounds. I retired to my tent, zipping up tight, my hatchet lying beside my sleeping bag. Sleep was slow to come. Every snap of a twig, every sigh of the wind seemed amplified, pregnant with meaning. I must have drifted off eventually, because I was jolted awake by a sound that didn't belong. It was a soft shuffling, like bare feet padding carefully over dry leaves, just beyond the thin nylon wall of my tent, circling. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held my breath, straining to hear. Animal? Bear. Unlikely to be so stealthy, so deliberate. The shuffling stopped, right outside my tent. Silence. A stretched, agonizing silence. Then, a whisper. Hello. My blood turned to ice water. My stomach plummeted. It was my voice. My own damn voice. The exact timbre, the same slightly hesitant inflection I sometimes have when unsure. A perfect mimicry. I lay there, paralyzed, every muscle screaming to either flee or fight. The rational part of my brain insisted it was impossible. A hallucination brought on by fatigue and isolation. But the clarity of it, the sheer accuracy, was undeniable. The pilot's warning slammed back into my mind. Don't answer it. My hand trembling, closed around the smooth wooden handle of the hatchet. I stayed utterly still, barely daring to breathe. The voice repeated, a fraction closer this time, as if the speaker, the mimic, had taken a step nearer. Hello? Is anyone out there? Again, my voice, like listening to a recording of myself, but live, breathing just inches away. There was a subtle, almost imperceptible scratching sound against the tent fabric, like a fingernail, lightly tracing the material. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached, squeezing my eyes shut, forcing myself to remain silent. Panic was a frantic bird beating against the cage in my ribs, desperate to escape in a scream, a shout, anything. But I held it in. The silence returned, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. What felt like an eternity passed. Then the soft shuffling resumed, slowly, deliberately, retreating back into the trees. The forest went back to its natural stillness, the chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl reclaiming the night. But it was a tainted stillness, the innocence of the wilderness stripped away, replaced by a profound and terrifying awareness. I didn't sleep a wink for the rest of that night. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves, was the thing, the mimic, returning. The next few days became a nightmarish blur of mounting exhaustion and ever-present dread. Sleep came only in short, fitful bursts, haunted by the memory of my own voice calling from the darkness. During the daylight hours, I forced myself to continue the survey, driven by a stubborn professionalism that now felt utterly foolish. Or perhaps it was a desperate attempt to cling to normalcy, to pretend this was just another job. But the forest wouldn't allow it. The deeper I pushed into the coordinates provided by Black Hollow Forestry, the more overt the wrongness became. The strange, vein-rooted trees grew denser, their canopies so thick that even at midday, the forest floor was cast in a perpetual twilight. The air grew heavier, and the faint, sweet, acrid scent I noticed on arrival intensified, sometimes becoming almost nauseating. I found more bones, arranged in those same disturbing ritualistic patterns. A circle of small animal skulls, all facing inwards. A trail of vertebrae, laid out in a perfectly straight line, leading into an impenetrable thicket. The feeling of being watched was constant, a palpable pressure on my skin, a prickling at the back of my neck. I'd catch fleeting moments at the periphery of my vision, a flicker of shadows between the trees, a disturbance in the undergrowth just too quick to identify. Several times I'd whirl around, hatchet in hand, only to find nothing but the silent, watchful trees. On the third day, I stumbled upon something that made my already frayed nerves snap taut. In a patch of damp earth beside a stagnant, algae-choked creek, I found boot prints. My boot prints. The distinctive waffle pattern of my hiking boots, clear and undeniable in the mud. But these prints were miles from where I had set up my current camp, and in a direction I hadn't yet explored on this particular transect. They were fresh, too. As if I had walked there just hours before. I hadn't. I checked my own boots. They were caked with different soil. It was impossible. Had I been sleepwalking? The thought was terrifying, but the alternative, that something was not just mimicking my voice, but also capable of creating a perfect replica of my tracks, was far worse. I began to doubt my sanity. Was the isolation getting to me? Am I hallucinating these things? But the evidence was too tangible. The bones, the tracks, the dead GPS, and the memory of that voice, my voice, was seared into my brain. The nights were the worst. The mimicking didn't happen every night. Some nights were filled only with an unnerving, profound silence, as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting. These were almost worse than the nights with the voices. The anticipation was a torture in itself. Then came the 5th night. I'd made camp early, too exhausted and on edge to push further. I didn't even bother with a fire, not wanting to draw any attention. I lay in my sleeping bag, eyes wide open, staring at the dark canvas of the tent, the hatchet clutched so tightly my knuckles were white. The whispers started just after true darkness fell, subtler this time at first. Not my voice. A woman's voice, soft and sorrowful, laced with an almost unbearable pain. David? David, is that you? Help me. It was my mother's voice. She'd been dead for 10 years. A sob caught in my throat. My mind reeled. It couldn't be. It was a trick, a cruel, elaborate trick. But the sound was so perfect. Her unique cadence, the slight tremor she always had when distressed. Son, where are you? I'm lost. It's so dark here. This time, my father's voice. He was alive and well, living in Florida, 1,000 miles away. Yet there was his unmistakable baritone, filled with a desperate confusion. The voices overlapped. A chorus of phantom loved ones, people from the past, people I cared about. My sister, Emily. David, I'm scared. Please, open the tent, let me in. A childhood friend who died in a car accident. It hurts, Davy. It still hurts. Make it stop. Each voice was a pinpoint of agony, a perfect recreation designed to exploit every emotional vulnerability. I bit down on my lip, tasting blood, tears streaming silently down my face. I wanted to scream, to answer them, to rush out and confront the source of this torment, or to offer comfort, if by some impossible madness it was truly them. But the pilot's stark warning and the primal fear that had become my constant companion held me captive. Don't answer it. Don't answer it. Then the cacophony of familiar voices ceased abruptly. An even deeper silence descended, so profound it felt like the world had stopped breathing. And from just outside my tent, so close I could hear the wet, ragged intake of breath. A sound that wasn't human, yet hideously organic. Came a new voice. It was low, guttural, and resonant with a chilling ancient amusement. It wasn't a mimicry of anyone I knew. It was something utterly alien. I'll do my best. We see you. I feel like that was fairly guttural, fairly low. The voice wasn't just outside the tent. It felt like it was inside my head. A cold, slimy intrusion. The air in the tent grew frigid. I could feel the fabric of the tent dimple inward slightly, as if something immense was leaning against it. That was the breaking point. The carefully constructed dam of my resolve, eroded by days of fear and sleeplessness, finally shattered. I didn't wait for dawn. As soon as the faintest hint of gray began to dilute the oppressive blackness of the sky, I was a blur of frantic motion. Camp was broken with reckless speed, gear shoved haphazardly into my pack. I didn't care about the soil samples, the timber measurements, the contract. The only thought that consumed me was escape. Get out. Get out of Black Hollow. But the forest seemed to conspire against me. The familiar, albeit unsettling landscape I had navigated for days had subtly transformed. Trees that I could have sworn were on my left now seemed to be on my right. Paths I thought I recognized petered out into impenetrable thickets of thorny vines. The vein-like roots of the black trees seemed to writhe and twist more overtly, like grasping tentacles forcing me to make detours. The sky above never fully brightened, remaining a murky, overcast dome of stagnant gray, diffusing the light into an eerie twilight that offered no clear sense of direction. My compass, the battered brass instrument the pilot had pressed upon me, became my focus of desperate hope, then crushing despair. It spun erratically, the needle quivering and dancing, refusing to settle on north. It was as useless as the dead GPS. I was navigating blind, relying on a fading sense of direction and sheer panic. The whispers followed me, a persistent, insidious accompaniment to my flight. They were no longer mimicking loved ones, but had taken on a sibilant, chattering quality, like dry leaves skittering across stone, always just behind me, just out of sight. Sometimes a coherent phrase would detach itself from the rustling susurrus. Lost. Stay. Join us. Other times it was just my name, drawn out and distorted. David. Hours passed in this desperate, disorienting scramble. My lungs burned, my legs ached, and scratches from unseen thorns crisscrossed my arms and face. Thirst gnawed at me, but I dared not stop long enough to filter water from the black, sluggish streams I occasionally crossed. Every shadow seemed to conceal a watching presence. Every rustle of leaves was a pursuing footstep. Then, around what I guessed was noon, though the light offered no clues, the dense trees abruptly opened up. I stumbled into a clearing. Not a natural one, but an almost perfect circle. The ground covered in a spongy, grayish moss that seemed to deaden all sound. The air here was still heavy, and possessed that same cloyingly sweet, acrid odor, now almost overpowering. The dim, stagnant light I'd seen earlier seemed to concentrate here, bathing the clearing in an unhealthy, unnatural glow. In the center of this unnatural amphitheater stood a figure. My breath hitched, my forward momentum ceasing as if I'd run into an invisible wall. It was tall, impossibly tall, easily 8 or 9 feet. Its limbs were elongated, disproportionately slender, stretching out from a narrow torso. Its fingers, visible even from this distance, were like needles, tapering to impossibly fine points. Its head was the worst part. It was vaguely humanoid in shape, but stretched, distorted, as if an ordinary human skull had been made of soft clay and pulled grotesquely upwards and backwards. The skin drawn over this aberrant frame was pale, almost translucent, and devoid of hair. And it was smiling. Not with its mouth. The feature was a lipless slit that remained static. Its entire face was smiling. The skin around its sunken, dark eyes crinkled upwards. The cheekbones, sharp and prominent, seemed to lift. The whole facial structure shifted and flowed in a way that defied anatomy. A grotesque pantomime of pleasure that made my stomach churn and bile rise in my throat. It wasn't a muscular movement. It was like the flesh itself was imbued with a horrifying, malleable life of its own. It stood perfectly still, its gaze fixed on me. There were no visible eyes in the conventional sense, just deep, shadowed sockets. Yet I felt its tension, like a physical weight. Then it spoke. Not aloud. There was no sound in the clearing, not even the whisper of wind. The words manifested directly inside my head, cold, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. You are leaving. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an observation. It was a statement of fact. A command delivered with absolute authority. As if my departure was a preordained event, it was merely acknowledging, or perhaps permitting. The sheer pressure of its silent voice in my skull was immense, terrifying. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. My body reacted on pure instinct. I stumbled backward, one step, then another, nodding frantically, a primal affirmation. My feet, clumsy and uncoordinated, found purchase on the spongy moss. I turned, a ragged sob escaping my lips, and ran. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, fueled by a terror so profound it bypassed all rational thought. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. The image of that smiling, alien face, and the chilling finality of its mental pronouncement were burned into my retinas. I don't know how long I ran, or in what direction. The forest was a green-black blur. My own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart, the only sounds I could register over the lingering echo of that internal voice. Then, through the trees, I saw a flicker of movement that wasn't part of the cursed woods. A shape. Man-made. The helicopter. It was waiting at the original extraction point, rotors already spinning slowly as if it had just landed or was preparing for imminent takeoff. The pilot stood beside the open door, his scarred face impassive, but his eyes, I saw as I burst from the tree line, were scanning the woods behind me with a keen, almost predatory intensity. He didn't say a word as I scrambled in, breathless, shaking, covered in mud and scratches. I collapsed into one of the seats, my pack falling to the floor with a thud. He was inside in a flash, the door sliding shut, and the helicopter lifted off with a powerful surge, ascending rapidly. The dense canopy of Black Hollow seemed to claw at us for a moment, then fell away, revealing the clearing, the cursed circle of trees, shrinking below. Only then, as we gained altitude and banked away, did I dare to glance back through the window. My heart seized. They were all there. Not just the figure from the clearing. Dozens of them. Standing in the deep shadows just beyond the tree line, at the edge of the small rocky area where I'd been dropped off. Tall, slender figures, their pale forms almost camouflaged against the dark bark of the ancient trees. Watching. Motionless. Not chasing. Not waving. Not threatening in any overt way. Just watching. Their collective gaze felt like a physical weight, even from this distance. The way their heads were slightly tilted, as if in silent, unified contemplation. The pilot must have seen them too, or perhaps sensed my horrified stare, because his grip on the controls visibly tightened, his knuckles white. He pushed the helicopter harder, faster away from that haunted place. The forest shrank into the distance, becoming just another dark patch of the vast, rumpled tapestry of the Appalachians. But I knew it wasn't just another patch. It was a wound. A place where the world was thin, and something terrible had bled through. For a long time, the only sound of the cockpit was the rhythmic whump-whump-whump of the rotors and my own ragged gasps for air. Finally, as the familiar, comforting sight of lesser, saner mountains began to appear on the horizon, the pilot spoke, his voice raspy. "You didn't answer them, did you?" He asked, his gaze fixed on the horizon ahead, not looking at me. I shook my head, unable to form words. My throat was raw, my mind still reeling from the terror. A choked, "No," was all I could manage. He nodded slowly, a flicker of something that might have been grim satisfaction in his scarred features. "Good." He was silent for another minute, then added, his voice much quieter, almost a whisper to himself. "They don't like it when you answer. They take it as an invitation." He paused again. "An agreement." I never went back. I didn't need to be told twice. The paycheck, the full amount plus a sizable and unexplained bonus, was wired to my account a week later, as promised. The sender was simply listed as BHF disbursement. When I tried to find any trace of Black Hollow forestry, it was as if they had evaporated into thin air. The email address I'd corresponded with bounced back any new messages as undeliverable. There was no website, no business registration, no phone listing. No record they had ever existed. It was as if the job, the forest, the entities within it were a shared hallucination between me and the scarred pilot. A man I never saw again, and whose name I never learned. But I still have the compass he gave me. It sits on my desk, a relic of a week I tried desperately to forget. It doesn't point north anymore. Most of the time, the needle just quivers, or spins slowly, aimlessly, But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the world is quiet and the shadows of my apartment grow long and deep, it will begin to spin. Faster and faster, a frantic, silent whirring. As if it's trying to point towards something. Or as if something, somewhere, is trying to point back. And on those nights, I can almost hear the whispers starting again, just at the edge of hearing. I pull the covers tighter, and I don't answer. I never answer. Oof. Got me getting some goosebumps now, jeez. Ooh. Beckoning Call the Black Hollow. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wow.
That was excellent.
It's just, thank you. It's so perfectly creepy. It's such an excellent, fun story. And again, it was the first story that I covered of yours. And I felt it was only fitting for us to bring it back to the fold as we now, talk about your book. It's such a good story. It's perfectly creepy. Nothing. There's horrific things that happen, but it's not like somebody dies in the story. It's like everything has already happened. You're uncovering the madness as it goes, and I love that. It's just, it's beautifully horrific.
Yeah, I always enjoy the horror stories, like reading where it's not necessarily like everyone's dying, running from a killer or anything like that, but it just like profound experience that changes somebody, like that is so horrific or something, or seeing something so horrific that it changes you as a person. So I've always liked those stories. And I really enjoyed writing this one. Like you said, it's the one you narrated a early draft of it about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. And it was that story that kind of inspired me to be like, let me put these in a book. I really liked that one. There's a bunch that I wrote maybe 3 years ago that I kind of had to alter a bit, modernize them a bit. You could try to fit the cadence of this story pretty much. Just try to keep, the same cadence, the same sort of flow, the narrative in a way, just to kind of make the book go a little smoother, in my opinion. Because I've always liked it when there's like a unified voice that you can read, and you kind of pick up in a cadence, and in my opinion, that's what makes it hard to put a book down, is when you start getting into that cadence, because you're just going with the flow in it, and it's like there's no abrupt stops. So
it's excellent. I'm really glad I got to read it again, because it just really reminded me why I really wanted to read it the first time. Because as I'm sure a number of people here now, you yourself included, there's a lot of stories I have kind of read, usually by, Reddit authors and stuff like that, just little indie fun stories. And I usually read a lot of them first. And I've read probably, maybe not thousands by now, but I've certainly read hundreds. And there's certainly plenty of them I'm like, I'm not gonna cover these. I don't tell them that. But usually, whenever I find one, I'm like, this is really good. And that's when I'm like, no. The message is going out. I want to see if I can, bring this to a wider audience, because I feel like it's truly special. And look at where it's brought us now. Now we're having a proper live stream about a book. Your book. It's incredible. What an amazing little turnaround. This is just it's truly incredible. So we're now going to go into a bit of a Q&A portion, everybody. So if you have questions for Bradley, please start putting them in the chat, and we will filter through them and find you. Don't worry. I do have some to kind of begin with, so I'll kind of get the ball rolling. But please feel free to come up with any yourselves. Let me go ahead and pop that on there, just so they can see them on the thing. There we go. It's not going to make a massive difference, but it's just a little pleasantry to put it on there. So, Brad, let's start with a question about the Beckoning Call of Black Hollow, since we just finished it. The story is a fun, horrifying idea of a workday slash week, a working experience. Bridging the gap between the mundane of working something you know and a fear of the unknown. Any particular inspirations for the creature slash creatures?
There's definitely what was the book called? There's a book called, I think it's The United States of Cryptids, that I read a while back. Really great. I've always been really fascinated by cryptids and stuff, especially around the Appalachian area because, I live in North Carolina. So just it's sort of a combination of several cryptids that I was reading about and sort of my own take on them. Like I love audible horror, like, because to me that's almost scarier than visual horror, because you can always shine a light in the darkness to see what something is if you're confused or concerned. But if you can't locate the source of a sound, like then it starts, it gets a little concerning.
Mm.
So I kind of had that idea of what would happen if you heard your own voice, like, it talking to you, and it sort of just kind of snowballed from there. The visuals of the creature kind of my take on an Appalachian skinwalker, and just sort of me kind of putting my own little twist on it, of what I think looks creepy, And I guess to tie in to Thunderstorm's question here, there's an area not too far from where I live called Cliffs of the Noose, that I've been to several times. It's a little nature park.
Name. I love it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just had to chime in.
It's not noose, like
name.
it's not that noose.
Oh, okay. Very different. Yeah. But it's
very different. But I really enjoyed walking around there, like when I was younger, kind of going through those wilderness like areas, and that sort of kind of put in my idea of like the fear of the woods. Like you would hear a crackle in the distance, or you would see something a little kind of unusual or something you can't make heads or tail of, and that was just sort of kind of like in the back of my mind, I guess, since childhood. And I guess whenever I'm out in those kind of environments, you just let your mind wander. Like, my wife kind of I'm sure loves when I'm like, it would be creepy when we're in a particular scenario, and I just start rattling on crap like that.
I completely understand. I certainly can be the same with usually my loved one, but other times just friends where you're like, I could think of some plenty creepy things we could, really horrify this situation, or something you don't want to stumble upon. Like I used to do a bit of urban exploration back in the day, and I was always concerned about, like, I'm not really worried about stumbling upon, say, a haunted location. I was more concerned about stumbling into a place and it was like filled with dangerous people or something like that. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's just the thing that you just can't expect, right? And that's what makes a lot of these things really, really exciting. All right, we'll continue with the talk of inspirations. You've written now quite a number of stories, and even published a book, which yet again, we're going to bring up 1,000 times, of course. What horror inspirations keep you fueled?
Ooh. So, in addition to reading and listening, or mostly listening these days, I have so many audiobooks in my backlog that I'm trying to catch up on. I got into horror film kind of at a younger age, and for some reason that just kind of clicked with me. Like watching movies like John Carpenter's The Thing, Silence of the Lambs, and those stories just clicked with me. Like you felt that tension in your chest, like the cat and mouse, who is it of John Carpenter's The Thing? It's just exhilarating. The eeriness of Hannibal Lecter talking. It was eerie. It was captivating. I honed in on that stuff, and I was like, I want to keep feeling that sort of adrenaline rush of like dread. And after a while, I've seen probably more movies than I care to admit. I've read quite a few mixture of true crime and just general horror. Uh, I went through the classics on audiobook. Like if you haven't seen it, there's the complete horror collection. I think it's on Audible, but it's the classic horror books like Frankenstein, Dracula, and stuff. But it's all narrated by Christopher Lee.
Oh,
To if you don't know, amazing actor. He
right.
played Saruman from Lord of the Rings,
Mm.
Count Dooku from Star Wars.
Oh,
He's just
yes.
amazing, and he
He is
just has
top
this
notch.
incredible voice. So highly recommend that. So kind of like keeping up to date and just listening to how horror has kind of shifted through the years is kind of what inspires me to kind of keep up and contribute in my own way. And this book was sort of my take on gateway horror that I enjoyed as a young kid, like stories like Goosebumps, scary stories to tell in the dark. I When I looked around like recently, I didn't really see anything that kind of scratched that itch. It was either really intense, like high schoolers or middle schoolers shouldn't be reading this, or it was like very tame and I got bored with it. So I wanted to kind of grab that feeling of like Goosebumps, scary story to tell in the dark, where it was like a short narrative, but an impactful one. And that's sort of how this book kind of came to be, was me wanting to recreate that feeling that I got when I was younger.
Mm.
Um, and that included getting art for it. Like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I think the biggest selling point is the artwork that is in those books. It's so good. And I kind of put a advert out for an artist, got a bunch of feedback. Ended up with I think I listed her in the chat here, Sarah Scalia.
Mm.
She's based out of Italy. She's incredibly talented, fantastic to work with. And she did some amazing work. And what I liked about it is her expressionist on her characters' faces. Because, I mean, if your person is scared, you want to be able to accurately reflect what that person's experiencing. And also, I threw some pretty vague descriptions out there for her, and she just produced these like terrifying monsters and illustrations. So really, really happy with that.
I can certainly second the especially the facial expressions, because I mean, again, we're not gonna mention too much of the other stories because I don't want to spoil things. We want people to really buy this book, and for good reason. So when I read some of the stories that he's written, and I remember one of our first proper chats that Brad and I've had was about the first story in the book called The Doodle, and sure enough, there is some excellent artwork for it, and there's one specific scene that pops up, and the artwork for it, for me, I was like, this is pretty horrifying, like in a really out there kind of a way. Like you don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but the expression that is portrayed in the scene is well captured, and I'm like, I would be pretty horrified to find this situation myself. So I completely agree. I completely agree. Some excellent artwork. Okay, let's move on to question number 3. A question I'm sure many creatives can appreciate. Based on the back of your book, you mentioned that you work in IT, you have a family, you're quite a busy person, as I'd imagine. When you do find the time to write/create, what does your process look like?
Yeah, like you said, very busy. I got 3 young kids, and very busy work schedule. I find I do a lot of phone typing. Like pretty much if I'm at night, when I'm just doom scrolling and I want to cheer up and think of something horrific, I have this Google Docs thing where I kind of throw ideas on.
Mm.
And if I don't have any new ideas, I tend to look at the older ideas and see, does that spur inspiration? Like pretty much every story I've written kind of started on my phone just as a Word document that I eventually was like, let me do the college try on it and polish it up a bit. So yeah, it kind of starts small. It's like an eerie idea that you kind of expand from. Like in the case of the Beckoning Call of Black Hallow, the first scare with it, the hearing your own voice, that was the first idea from it, and then it sort of just like expanded from there. Where I wouldn't add like story points to it, I would just add like, oh, maybe he hears his dead mom or a dead friend, and kind of go to it from that and start thinking of the creatures and everything. Um, and then after a while, I kind of look at it and be like, that's a lot of ideas for it. Let's put pen to paper and let's type it out. And I do most of my writing at night when the kiddos are asleep. Um, so I stay up probably later than I should doing it, but you do what you can when you can, and it's I like it. It like I get enjoyment out of writing and doing all this like that. It's very cathartic for me. It's very therapeutic. So it's a lot of fun to kind of just come up with a story and start from like one tiny point to a full-fledged like multiple page narrative.
Hmm. Excellent, excellent, good stuff. So this next question I have, I've also seen pop up in the chat a few times. For example, by Jessica here. Oh, let's see, she is just behind you there. I'm gonna shift that a little higher up in the roster so we can see that. There we go. So Jessica's asked it. I know King of Goombas also asked it, and so my fourth question, which aligns with all these, writer's block. What do you do when you get it? Have you ever had it? Like, well,
Oh,
what
yeah.
was your experience with it?
Yeah, I mean, especially when I was trying to kind of update these stories to kind of flow a little better and like a collection. Um, there would be some times where I'm banging my head against the monitor, trying to figure out how to improve it, how to expand upon it. And what I tend to do is kind of what I do at work is if I hit a roadblock on something, I just start working on something else. And usually by doing that, it kind of like spurs some inspiration, or I'll have a thought being like, oh, I could do that there instead of here, and kind of go to it from that. Like, and honestly, like I've had situations where I changed projects like three times because I have writer's block with one, and I'm like, let me shift gears and do another. And then I'm like, oh crap, I have writer's block with this one too. And then I was like, shift gears to another. And eventually it all kind of comes together, but it is difficult at times to like to connect things. Like I said, I put ideas in a Word document, and I like a lot of those ideas, but it's a matter of like actually building a narrative out of it, rather than just being like, I got this really cool, scary idea. I was like, well, what are you going to do with it? What's the plot? What's the story? Why should I be invested in that scare?
Mm, that's I think that's a pretty elaborate answer. I like it. It's very good. Let's see. Question 5. If people want to read more of your work online, where should they go?
Originally, I would probably give them my subreddit, but I've pretty much erased all those stories since most of them ended up in the book. They were early drafts, um, and I, I I guess if you want to read more, just kind of I have a website. I can post it here in the chat here in a little bit. That's where I'm going to be kind of keeping up to date on some possible future works, or maybe even some short stories that didn't make the cut for this book that I would include, maybe there. Like that's sort of my idea of what to do in the blog portion, is just uh, throw it up there. Like it didn't make the cut, but I don't necessarily think they're bad stories.
Mm-hmm.
I put my website there in the chat. But
Good,
yeah,
good. I can pop that up on the screen real quick. Once it's finished popping up, it will eventually catch up with me. That's okay. I'll come back to that. I've just lost where I was. Oh no. Oh no! I keep scrolling me down. Oh, it's because I've clicked that now. Just sometimes I'm terrible with my own technology. Let's see. Question number 6. Do you think you'll do another book? And if so, will it be an anthology of stories like this one, or perhaps a more fleshed out single story?
There, I have two stories right now that I really like. They didn't make the cut for the book simply because they both sort of grew to a point where I was like, I think this story would benefit from its own book, its own story, its own narrative. Um, and I have two. I won't go too in depth with them. One's again sort of kind of how do I describe it? A little bit of sci-fi horror. Because I do like to dip into different genres. Like in the book, I try to dip into different types of tropes. Like your stalking, your skinwalkers. You also have body horror in it because, like I said in the chat, my favorite horror film of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing. Like that just like I watch it at least twice a year. Like it's my comfort film. Strangely enough, but so I like there's certain things where I was just like, I kind of wanted to try that, give somebody sort of that feeling that I got watching that, but like my take on it. And I won't go too in depth into which story it is, but body horror does play kind of a heavy part into it. Not in like a people exploding kind of way, but sort of, well, if you want to read it, you'll have to get the book.
Quite right. That's an excellent point. And don't worry, we do have the links in the description below if you're looking to buy the book, but we will also show up some of the things on the page a little later on as well. Don't worry. Let's see. Moving on to the next question, and don't worry, we will be transitioning into the live questions as well. I do see a couple of you already. I'm ready to pounce. Don't worry. Let's see. Question 7. Speaking of books, where could people buy a physical copy of this one? That's really funny. I just kind of answered my own question, didn't I? But I can actually, if you want to talk about it, I can actually provide some additional images. So,
yeah, absolutely. The book is available on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes and Noble. There's a couple of book retailers here in North Carolina that I've reached out to that are stocking the book for them. There's a wonderful independent bookshop here in the town of Goldsboro, North Carolina, called Between the Lines, and they really enjoyed it. That's where I did my first book signing, and they're asking to keep a running inventory of that book because it was doing pretty decently. So if you're in that area, I recommend going to Between the Lines. Definitely support the independent bookstores. If you can. There's also, if you're in the North Carolina area, there's another, and of course I can't remember who they are, which is great timing. But there's another bookstore that is local to Raleigh, North Carolina, that is also stocking the book as well, which is pretty exciting. So, and if you go to like Goodreads as well, like there's quite a few places you can find the book. Like I tried to make it as readily as available as possible. So I tried to kind of dip into a lot of the local area because I like independent bookstores. That's what got me reading. Is when I was younger, there was a little library not too far from where I was living in Pikeville. So I would go there and just peruse. And I love that feeling, of just going into a bookstore, seeing the possibilities there. So.
Excellent.
And it's Quail Ridge Books. Quail Ridge Books in Raleigh. Fantastic store. And you can order the book online. I think they do have a couple of copies in hand right now, but definitely want to give a shout out. I love Quail Ridge Books. They're amazing.
Shout out accepted. That's no problem with me, man. Don't even worry. So I do have a final question, but because I feel like it kind of changes topic a little bit, we might chuck that in a little bit later. So we're gonna take some of the questions I've seen in the chat pop up. So this first one comes from Thunderstorm Comics, and it asks, "What inspired you to write this story?"
That story was definitely inspired by kind of being in Appalachian wilderness, like at the Cliffs of the News Trail. There's a place I went to once that kind of stuck with me called Creeper Trail. Really hard, difficult names, or intense names.
Mm.
So kind of that like deep forest wilderness is what it's what inspired me to have that as location, just because even growing up, I was like, this place is kind of creepy, like even in the daylight, because the trees would cast shadows from the sun and everything, and it kind of is a little eerie. One of the stories also, it's all like a lot of locations I'll see and be like, I want a story there. Like for work, I ended up in Ohio last year, and I got to see Lake Erie for the first time.
Oh.
And just by seeing it, I was like, this, like the name, the visual, everything. I was like, I want a story there. And so there is a story in the book from at Lake Erie. Um, so so a lot of it has to do with like locations. Um, and then of course reading like the United States of cryptids. I you hear about these like skinwalkers, mimics in those books, and I was just like, I kind of want to take a twist on it. And I used to work with a mapping company, so that is kind of why I went with like a mapping protagonist, just something because I knew the terminology for it. Yeah, so
Excellent. That certainly helps. I feel like or even if you just like have done research into a topic enough where you feel like you can kind of flesh it out further with the extra interesting detail. I agree. It immerses you just that little bit more. You're like, this isn't just like it's a classic, a stranger to a town. They don't really have any. Maybe they have a special skill or something like that you find out about later that doesn't feel super relevant. Oh no, a horrific thing has happened. A sadly rehashed thing that we hear an awful lot about. So it is nice to have it be a bit more like, I don't know, this is a person who they are specialized in a certain thing. You're going to get a little bit more of the detail. That it just pulls you in a little bit further. I do appreciate that. I think that's quite nice.
I feel a better connection to the characters I write if I can personally put myself in their shoes in a way. Like obviously I'm not in the wilderness or anything like that, but I've worked with GIS people quite a bit after college, and so I knew what they did. I knew what they would do for a particular job.
Right.
And then like one of the stories is about, actually a couple about just media listening to like podcasts, and there's one that someone's digging into the dark web in a way, and like that's stuff that I could relate to. Like that's kind of some stuff that I might have done at a dumb age. And so like I didn't want to do anything where I was like, it's like one of the stories originally was going to have like a doctor protagonist, but then I was like, I know nothing about the medical field. So I was just like, I scrapped that idea pretty quickly. I was like, nope, this isn't like, I'm just like, oh, you need medicine, like it was getting kind of
bad. Here's some ibuprofen for your broken femur. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I completely
it's like I watched the show House, and that's about where it ends.
Vicodin, or it's probably lupus. Vicodin. Yeah. And I also watch House. All right, next question from the audience is by a Jeffrey and Luke Cuddle. Fun name. Good for Jeffrey and Luke. Do you have a soul?
What is that?
Yeah. Where can he pick one up?
Yeah, what's that taste like?
Is it tangible? Can I like grab it? Like, do you steal them? How does this word work? It's a weird word.
Exactly.
I think that answers the question. Next one by Jessica Butts is, what is something that scares you that you won't write about? That's a pretty good question.
Since having kids, like I've definitely had to like limit some media that I absorb. Like like something like changed the moment my first kid was born to where I don't do violence on kids. Like it's really hard for me. It's very
It's a, it's a,
intense to
it's a
me because
good rule to have.
it got personal, you know? And so, I mean, there's still stuff out there you can't avoid. Like, I saw the It movies and, Welcome to Derry. And there's violence with children in
Oh,
that. But,
mm,
it hits different now that I am emotionally invested in fatherhood and I have that love to my children and just like I think it was what is it called? The Witch or VV Itch, whatever.
oh yeah.
Um yeah, that movie. And there was a scene in it that I had to pause and like take a breather because it involves the mutilation of a baby.
Mm,
And I was just like, I had a baby in the other room, and I was like, I can't. Like it was, so I avoid that. Like it does scare me. I know it's a scary thing to a lot of people out there, but it's also one of those things where I'm just like, I'm not comfortable writing it. Like I wouldn't want to put those ideas on paper. Like I don't want to think because all I'll envision is my kids,
mm.
you know? So it's kind of hard to separate that.
Yeah, I think that is incredibly sensible, and I agree. I can. I mean, not that I have children of my own. I don't, but I certainly can sympathize with the fact that I feel like children is always just like it's just like a no topic in
Mm.
my opinion, especially when it comes to the
Oh,
world of horror. You know what I mean? Like I understand, like especially if you're writing about towns and villages and stuff, that will be children present because they exist. But I think it's one thing if like the children disappear and you just don't really know what happened to them. That I feel like is okay. It's still scary, but it's certainly ickier. Yeah, I certainly don't like that kind of stuff either. So I'm completely with you on that.
yeah. It's
Let's
rough.
see. Let's see the next one by Thunderstorm Comics again. What books did you take inspiration while making Where the Streetlight Ends? So books specifically or
Definitely,
series?
like I said, Goosebumps, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was sort of the foundation of it. But they're like some of my favorite books. Like you take inspiration from what you read. I read a lot of Stephen King. Once I kind of got into high school, really got into that, which I know shocking horror people liking Stephen King. But even younger than that, like Michael Crichton was
Mm-hmm.
also like I really enjoyed his work because it wasn't horror, most of it was science fiction, but there's just level of tension and unease with what he did. He's the author of like Jurassic Park, Sphere, the Andromeda Strain, and they all kind of had like horror-like elements to it that I really kind of gravitated to. And who, of course, Edgar Allan Poe. Like that's sort of what I wanted to kind of recreate in terms of like a a voice flow with the book. Like obviously, I'm not rhyming like him or anything, but whenever you read like The Raven or anything like that, his poetry, it's almost like you can imagine how he sounds talking. Like you get that flow going, and you're just like, that's it's like that was an inspiration to try to get the narrative in line with each of the stories. And as far as like creatures, I've already mentioned The Thing, but anything by Junji Ito
Oh,
um, is like,
my man. Mm. Ah,
his artwork is phenomenal. If you're not a huge fan of, or if you're a fan of horror in general, you haven't heard him, do yourself a favor and look up Junji Ito. He's done some terrifying artwork with some really captivating stories. Um, so I recommend it. Those were probably my like go-to authors recently and in the past.
good stuff. Good stuff. I like it. Junji Ito. Great call out. Completely agree. Great. Oh, just
Oh,
yeah.
so good.
The just always oh, just so visceral in the art is just insane. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I can digress with that.
Right. So next one up by Thunderstorm Comics again. What's your favorite horror movie?
Favorite horror movie? I've said it multiple, or I've mentioned it a few times just in the stream. John Carpenter's The Thing. is probably my favorite. It was one of the first horror movies I saw. Um, and just watching it, it was so intense. The story, the special effects, like the jump scares with it, like everything was just done perfectly. Um, I think a close second would probably be the original The Exorcist. That
Ooh.
was a movie that I started as a young kid, and I couldn't finish it because I was that scared. It took me some time to actually get through the whole thing. But it's a dang near perfect horror film. Like a lot of people, there's been sequels, been reboots and stuff, and it just hasn't been captured that terror that was in that. So those are probably my two close favorites.
I think those are solid answers. Very solid answers. Let's see. We'll take another one from him, and then we'll move to. Let's see. If you could describe this book in one word, what would the word be?
Definitely nostalgic is what I was going for. Like
Mm.
it is my take on like 90s gateway horror. So for people reading it and everything, like, there's of course the newer audience that you're trying to get, the current middle schoolers, the current high schoolers, get them into the genre and everything. But there's also, like, I know a bunch of people. I've been reaching out and networking with a lot of authors recently in the North Carolina area, and some of the stuff I've heard back from them is they're like, I get that nostalgic feeling reading this. Like it's
Mm.
classic tropes, but sort of modernized a bit.
Mm.
Like what would be like the social media aspect or outcry of like a mental breakdown happening in a high school for multiple students, stuff like that. And then even with, the Beckoning Call of Black Hollow, like it's a modern day job, but really the job itself was just an excuse to get him in the wilderness, but it was something that I felt like I was more connected to just from previous employers and everything to use that kind of style. So you have that classic lost in the woods trope, creepiness and everything, but I was like, what's more terrifying? Like, having this GPS, having these accesses to modern day technology, and none of them work, and you're left like we're so like tied into technology these days. And I say that I work in IT, I'm with tech all the time, but there's nothing like I always feel like, and this is just personally, there's nothing worse than if you're driving relying on GPS and your phone dies. That
Mm.
you're just suddenly like, oh crap, I got to pretend it's the 90s, and
Do I have a
sometimes it's
map in the
stressful.
car?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I remember even in like the early days of having standalone GPS. When we had the new older smartphones, like, but they weren't. I mean, some of them weren't even very smart. I mean, I know for the longest time I had like the Motorola Razor flip phone, so I didn't even really have a smartphone for the first period when smartphones
You had a
became
cool
like
phone though.
iPhones. Oh
That
yeah,
was a
it was a
cool
great
phone.
phone. It was a great phone. But I remember we had to have a whole, a TomTom, a whole standalone GPS thing for the car, which was again at the same time like, oh, that's incredible. We can basically go without having to use MapQuest printed directions and stuff. So you're right. It is a bit more of a modern take with just classic inspirations. It's a good bridge. It's a really good bridge. King of Goombas asks, do you prefer digital or traditional writing?
I prefer. I really like pen and paper writing. Like I got several notebooks around my office right now where I will. A lot of the ideas are first just typed into my phone, and then later, if I when I have some downtime and stuff, and I actually want to kind of like make a flow together, like there is often a break between actually writing out the story, like the blurps and everything, and then I'll type them digitally and kind of clean them up from there.
Mm.
So it's a bit of a hybrid, but I do like writing. I don't know. I feel more connected when I put pen to paper and draw like graphs to be like, all right, so this character will do this, this will impact this, and then transitioning it to digital. Like I have some digital tools like Babisco and Scrivener that
Mm.
a lot of authors enjoy, and they are great tools. But I I always feel like I'm not using 90% of the features that are on there. And I really, I can just accomplish what I want to do just through Microsoft Word.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I too, I'm quite similar. I usually have some kind of it's usually a flip notebook because sometimes I'm like, maybe I just have like little idea notes. I just don't want to lose them. You know what I mean? So I'll just make little jot notes. And I also use Scrivener, funnily enough. But I also use Obsidian because I find that to be quite good for simple digital note taking. I definitely don't use it enough, you know. So I feel you. I'm more at home using paper, but I do try to incorporate digital just in case.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to avoid it. It's darn near impossible, really, in this day and age.
Mm.
But, you know, like coming from, you know, an upbringing where the internet was brand spanking new, uh, you know,
Yeah.
if you wanted to write something, it had to be kind of pen to paper or typewriter and everything, you know, like,
Yeah.
it's weird because you know, I grew up in an area before we had all these conveniences and everything. And then I still kind of like, although I know that these other tools are probably really good and would help, there's just that comfort in what I'm used to.
Mm.
And I feel like, you know, when you're writing and everything, and if you enjoy writing, you do what feels comfortable. Because if, you know, like if I'm messing with the tool for 30 minutes and I get maybe 10 minutes of writing, you know, that's frustrating. Where I can just open up Word, type up some stuff, and just
And
rip
tidy
up
it
a
up
page.
later. Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I resonate with that. I think that's ultimately what it always is. At the end of the day, everybody's process is different. There is no one perfect solution. You just kind of figure out what works for you. And as we both also mentioned, sometimes it's a hybrid. Don't be afraid. Just play around with stuff and be like, you know what? Maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try that, and you might figure it out as you go. You just never know. You just never know. Let's see. Jessica asks, if you had a chance to co-write with any author, is there a particular author you jump at the chance to collaborate with?
I guess it would depend on what I want to write. Um, like obviously, like, you know, Stephen King, that would be like absolutely, that would be incredible. I've really enjoyed recently the series American Vampires. It's a comic book series by a gentleman by the name Scott Snyder. Um, and he actually collaborated with Stephen King with that comic series.
Mm.
And I've read a lot of Scott's work now because, you know, between American Vampires, he had another really good series I think called Witches, which is like 10 issues, but the art is incredible. It's a super scary story. And then he also did Batman for a while. So he's just like a Swiss Army knife of creativity that is like, and his Batman stuff is also drenched in like this beautiful horror. Like, you know, like the Joker comes back after losing his face and he's like attached it back with like fish hooks and stuff. And it's just his arc with, I think it was Greg Capullo, is like excellent. So like recently I've been kind of on a Scott Snyder kick. So like he's the first one that came to mind and be like, that would be cool because he is just a plethora of unique ideas, unique visions. And yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be super cool. Wow. Oh man, that's yeah. That guy. That's quite a powerhouse when you really like say everything. Oh man, that's really cool. That's really cool. So Thunderstorm Comics asks, favorite book.
Oof. I guess it depends on the genre. My favorite horror book is definitely The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley. Was it Shirley Jackson? I read that back in high school, and it was encapsulating. It was creepy, and you know, there's so much good media that came from that book, and it was just it's one of those things where I'm like I constantly think about it. Like something brings me back to that book. I've read it multiple times, listened to the audiobook multiple times. Like it's one of those comfort books for me. of just I know the story and I love to relive it. Like it's just like, oh, this part's coming up and it's so good. Um, the so that's probably my favorite horror book. Um, I do like World War Z, the book, not the movie, uh, by Max Brooks. Yeah, I think that's it. That was just a unique zombie book, like just in general, like just the aftermath of a war, kind of reading it almost like a biography in a way. Like it felt real, like it was very neat. And Thomas Harris, like I've enjoyed the Hannibal Lecter series, Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, um, Hannibal. So like I read those a lot too. So again, those are kind of my like rotated around. Like I'm constantly finding new things to read and listen to that are amazing. But every now and then, if I'm just like looking through my backlog and I get overwhelmed, sometimes I just pick up a classic and be like, I'm just going to go back to something comfortable rather than get invested in something new.
Understandable. Very understandable. So Jeffrey and Luke Cuddle are back. My goodness. And they ask, do all the stories take place in the same universe?
I kind of like to think
the Bradley Extended Universe, yeah.
Yeah. The butthole, as it were. Now, okay.
We don't tell me we have to make that canon.
No. I like to think that the stories could be in a singular universe. Like, there's nothing in there that really kind of breaks. Like one story negates another. Like I've always liked those tales where there are like the world is full of mysteries. The world is full of some weird stuff out there. So isolating no, the doodle only takes place in this universe where very well the doodle and the beckoning call could be happening simultaneously around the same time. So I would argue that they probably are in the same universe. I kind of stick with trying to be as grounded as possible where you can with it. That's why I kind of avoid like sci-fi genres and fantasy genres where I have to like create like other things where I'm just going to stick with what I know for these stories. May change that with future works, but for at least this book, I was like, keep it modern, keep it simple, and go from there.
Solid. Very solid. Oh, a new one by Mr. Big C Burger asks, have you considered jumping into other genres with horror? For example, romance horror, sci-fi horror, fantasy horror, etc.
Yeah, good question. My next book, or the next story I'm working on, is probably more sci-fi horror. It started just as a generic short story, that sort of just kind of expanded to the point where I'm like, I was going to put it in this book as one of the short stories, and then I was like, but I could do this with it. Like there could be this. But it's like, that's a prologue, on its own, and just kind of expanded on there. I do like different genres. Like horror to me is something that can be done with almost any genre out there. Historical horror, fantasy, romance, stuff like that. Like it's a very flexible genre. Most of the stuff, I'm probably not very good at romance. Like I know certain genres just I would not fit with, so probably wouldn't do like romance, but definitely looking into sci-fi horror with my next project, and I'd be interested in maybe collaborating with somebody on like a fantasy type horror, like kind of like a modern trope, but in like a old-timey setting or something like that. Like that might be interesting.
That could be quite interesting. Good question nonetheless. Next up, Chaos Smith asks, have you read Bruce Coville's Book of Monster Tales to Give You the Creeps?
I have not. I actually just put that on like my wish list while we were talking because I saw it and I like the cover on it. The like little kid hiding under the blanket with this like big old creature. It looks fun, like to me. Like that's sort of the vibe I was kind of aiming for with this book, was to kind of recreate that feeling. So I'm excited to get a chance to look into it.
Yeah, so it sounds like another fun little horror anthology. Like you said, like you mentioned, gateway horror is probably the best way to mention it. Where it's like it's not crazy, horrifying, gory, scary, or anything like that. It's like it's a bunch of things that will make you a bit creeped out and scared, and maybe really think differently. But it's a good entry point. And I think that sounds fun. But I also haven't read it. But I'm gonna have to give that a look too. Okay, Jeffrey and Luke cuddle. Man, they're cuddling a lot. I don't know what's up with that. It's a little, as long as you guys keep it PG, that's fine. What ideas were scrapped while writing the book?
Definitely the story I'm working on now was definitely scrapped. It was originally going to go in there, and I kind of just, like I said, it got too big to fit into a anthology, and I thought I'd be doing it a disservice if I didn't make it its own narrative, its own story, its own book. I did have one story that almost made the cut, where it was sort of my take on like what would happen if you did find, like, while scuba diving, because I've been diving before with my dad and sister, and I have a terrible fear of like not being able to see under the water, and so it's not a good combination. But I was like, but one of the stories was, what would happen if you were diving, going cave diving, go through, and you found a door just underwater, and it's locked, and what you hear is like a knock from the other side of the door. And that was sort of my take on like what if you found Davy Jones' locker, like an actual like dimension to the other side, like where, creepy ghosty stuff is. Almost made the cut, but I don't know. It just, after reading it after I was done with it, I kind of just went back, and I was like, I felt the other stories were stronger than that one.
Fair. Oh, it's still quite an interesting story, though. I gotta say, as a person who has gone cave diving, and I haven't gone scuba diving though, but I've always liked the idea. But I also don't know how I'd feel in like a proper wetsuit and proper scuba environment. Maybe I'm a little claustrophobic or something like that. I'm not sure, but that's certainly creepy. I'm really intrigued now for this. So I'm keeping my eye on you, Brad. Okay. Ooh, this is an interesting one. So Thunderstorm Comics asks, who would you want to write and or direct a TV show or movie of one of your stories?
That is a really good question.
It's okay if you don't know.
I think the first one that popped into my mind, and people who know me are probably about to roll their eyes, like, of course he said this, but Mike Flanagan would probably be my like I would love to see his take on some of these stories. He's done incredible work. I've loved almost everything he's done. Like a man that was able to take like a kind of a mediocre horror film like Luigi and then make a sequel that like surpassed it by like a nautical mile. Like, it's a very creepy sequel, and it's like bizarre. And like some of his movies are kind of like in a way like those classic tropes sort of. I mean, he's done so many Stephen King adaptations. I think he's got like a blank check for, if he wants to adapt Stephen King, do it. Like there's Oculus. I think it was Oculus, or was it Oculus, the one with the mirror?
Yes, that's Oculus.
That was fantastic. So eerie, so creepy. Like that would be my go-to there. Like, if that happened, I could die happy.
Yeah, I completely get it. Mike Flanagan is a good call. It's a good call. I completely agree. A lot of good stuff by him. Ooh, King of Goombas asks, any words of encouragement to aspiring authors?
The only thing I would say, the biggest thing is jump in. Like, it took me, I've been writing since high school, like a lot of stories and stuff, and I've deleted probably more than I should just out of pure lack of confidence. And it wasn't until, the rise of social media and the ability to kind of hide yourself behind a username that I was like, let me post some of my stories. I'm just curious. Like, what do people think? Because I like doing it and I want to get better at it. So I started posting on the creepypasta subreddit for a while. And then I moved to like no sleep. And then there was just like scary short stories subreddit. And it's all a unique challenge because they all have their own rules with them.
Very
Like
much so.
with no sleep, it has to be kind of grounded. Like it can't be like, oh, and then I explode, as the ending. Like you have to survive and it has to be first person. And so I learned a lot as a writer by putting myself in those different subreddits and being like reading the rules, having a story, and then being like, okay, let me try to adjust the story so it fits their guidelines and go to it from there. And again, it was still me hiding behind a username, so I felt like, if somebody critiques it or says this is absolute trash, like, it's not like a personal attack or something. I don't know. I disassociated with it. But it was that sort of exercise that really improved my confidence, improved my writing, and and I also got like you would read work on those subreddits and you would just read some of these amazing stories and amazing ideas, and all it can really do is just spur inspiration. Like you're like, this person is out here writing this good, like what's stopping you? So my advice would be jump on in, try and if you're afraid to put your actual name to it, hide behind your username. That's fine. I did it for years. But you get your work out there, get feedback on it. Like that's one thing I love about those subreddits is the community is there like to encourage. Like very rarely did I ever read any comment on any story where someone was like, trash, throw away your keyboard. And like they're always like encouraging, telling you like maybe do this, but this was really good. Like it's a really positive community. So if you want to be a writer or anything, like find that sort of tight community, form it, and network. Like I've connected with quite a few authors in the North Carolina area these past few weeks, and I've now got more stuff on my to read list because I want to read their works now. And that's an exciting thing of being able to read something that somebody else wrote, and then you can pick their brain. Like you can read works by Stephen King and all that, but I doubt you're going to have coffee with him. So it's handy to be able to talk to an author and be able to pick their brain on their work, like just through Instagram or anything like that. So networking, and just don't be afraid to get your work out there. Like people are encouraging. People love creativity. And for all you have the next big thing up there in your head. So if you don't put it out there for people to read, that's where it's going to die. It's just going to die in your head, and you're kind of taking that from other people. So
Eloquent, beautifully put. But he's right. Just try stuff. Just try it. Doesn't hurt. I mean, there's ways to do it, but still, just try it. He's very right. Let's see. I have one more here, and then it looks like it's a little bit off the rails, so we'll kind of jump back to mine. So King of Goombas asks, if you had the opportunity to recreate any horror movie, which would you pick?
ooh.
You can say The Thing. It's fine.
No, you don't touch perfection. No. God, like to me, it would have to be like a movie that had potential that just wasn't met. Like there are a bunch of like movies like that where it's like, hey, it was okay. Like the potential was there, but it just wasn't executed very well. Kind of like in a way, like speaking of The Thing, like they had a prequel movie that came out, like I think it was also called The Thing. But there was potential with it because there was a story to be told. Like in the movie, in the original, you knew that there was a previous research facility that the dog came from. and they went over there and they found bodies like mutated and stuff, and like the explosion where clearly something came out of the ice. Like the potential was there, in my opinion. But kind of like, and I've already looked into why it was the case. Like there was some dispute of using practical effects versus CGI. CGI being the cheaper option, but it it was meant to be a love letter to the original, and the CGI effects that they took were so rushed in a way. Like it took away to potential for it, because they made the Thing, which is really not, in my opinion, a monster in a way. It's a creature that's trying to survive. And that's kind of what makes it fascinating. Is it's not a villain, it's an antagonist to the story.
Yeah.
Like to him, he's just trying to survive, and they kind of reverted that in the prequel, where it's like they made him kind of a generic, like, oh, I'm just a movie monster, rah rah rah. And like, to me, that there was a lot of potential for that, where I'm like, that could have been really cool if done right. Like if you Google, the people who were working on the movie did do a lot of practical effects, like excellent practical effects. There's some footage of it online, but obviously it got overwritten in post production or whatever with CGI. They did do another movie, I think, called Harbinger Down, which does feature a lot of really good practical effects, but the movie's story wasn't really there, in my opinion. It was kind of rough. But yeah, that would probably be I would maybe remake a Thing prequel if given the chance. Yeah.
No, solid. Before we jump back to mine, Jessica actually did have a pretty good relevant question, so I think we'll go for it. What is something you hope people will take away from your book?
I hope it kind of opens up this avenue of like what else is out there. Like like I said, it's meant to be gateway horror. It's meant to kind of slip you in a little bit of this and that, where like for me, when I was reading Goosebumps and then transitioned to scary stories until eventually I got to some pretty rowdy stuff with Stephen King and Joe Hill and everything. Like there was that, like, horror is a difficult genre for a lot of people. Like a lot of people I've talked to, who I tried to introduce the book to, they're just like, oh, I don't really like scary stories. And to me, my first instinct is you haven't read the right ones. Like, that, like, sure, there are things out there that might be too much for you, and I've read them. There are stuff that's too much for me. But I would hope that it would maybe get them that little bit of itch, like maybe just one story out of 10. They're like, I really liked that one. That one kind of like resonated well with me. And maybe from there, they go out and kind of look for something similar. So that would be my go-to.
Nice. I can certainly appreciate that. So we're gonna. It's a slight pleasant transition question wise, but I think it'd be interesting. People learn a little bit more about Bradley, the man himself. So this is a fun one that I've got. What kind of hobbies are you into?
Ooh. So I am a pretty boring person. I guess in a list of hobbies, I do like video games. Like I play video games with my kids now that they're a little older and we can actually play fun things. Like Diablo 4. Me and my oldest, we've been playing that, and that's
I
been
didn't see that coming. I thought you were gonna say like Minecraft or something, but okay, no, that's interesting.
So that's been fun. I also I got some friends I play a card game with, sort of like Magic the Gathering, but it's much simpler. It's called Lorcana. I play that whenever I get the chance to. It's a fun little card game that I got introduced to. And I watch a lot of movies and television. even on just my own, like, how many ratings do I have right now? On IMDb, I have rated 2,201 titles. So I've seen a few things, and I've been, to be fair, I've been keeping track of this since I was in college. So 2012 was my first review on there, and it's just sort of grown into it. I love a lot of media, like whether it's sci-fi, horror, thriller, or anything. Like there's so much stuff in there. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff I watched recently has been on Tubi because it's free, and
Andy.
there's a reason for that.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I really like film and television. You know, if in a different world, I probably would have tried to get into that industry somehow. Uh, but yeah, it's that's been my go-to recently, and I haven't gone to the movie theaters as much for a while. I think the last movie I saw in theaters was Weapons, um, and that was like that was like I had to organize some stuff to go to that, with the family and everything, because they didn't want to watch it. Yeah, no. And which is unfortunate because May looks loaded with some fantastic movies that I want to see. And like Hokum is coming out, and
Yeah,
then
I
you
like
got
Roadhog.
and then what was the other ones? Passenger, which looks very scary.
Don't know that
And
one.
then there was another one. Oh, whatchamacallit? The Backrooms.
Oh yeah,
That's coming.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that just because of the story that, I mean, it's the youngest director A24 has ever had. You know, like
And
it's
the
kind
guy
of,
who did one of the most popular Backrooms videos on YouTube. I mean, you
yeah,
gotta respect it. It's impressive.
you really do. It is impressive. Like I'm very excited to see it, and it's got a really good cast too. So
Hmm.
I was just like, heck yeah. And then you got Evil Dead Burn coming out, which awesome. Does that come out this month too? It might. I don't know. But yeah, if I get the chance, now it comes out in July. But if I get the chance, I definitely try to go out and keep up to date with movies. If not, I have to wait till they go on streaming, which happens.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I just have to avoid social media for like forever so I can not get spoiled.
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, I don't go on social media too much, so I've luckily not had to deal with much spoilers of things. But you know, count my blessings; it'll happen one day, right? Oh my goodness
I was one
gracious!
of those few people lucky enough to see The Sixth Sense like several years after it came out and not know the ending. Like it
Wow,
floored me.
lucky.
And I watched
Huh.
it, and what, that came out in '99. I think I watched it when I was like 15 or something.
Hmm.
So I you know, would that happen now? I doubt it. Like I think it's become such a taboo almost in the industry. Like that's, you think twists like that just comes out,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Plus, I memed it's
But
been memed to death anyway. I mean, everybody knows that movie, even if they haven't
yeah,
seen that movie. They know the twist.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like they might not know what the movie's about, but in the end, they're like, "Oh yeah, Bruce Willis is dead the whole time." So
Yeah.
it's just like, and it's
Spoiler
about to
if
be
you haven't
30,
seen it.
yeah. Well, it's about to be a 30-year-old movie. Like, come on.
Right after point, it's not even a spoiler. Like it's just a freebie.
Yeah. Uh, it's
Oh
it's
man.
the beginning of the descent into lesser M. Night Shyamalan movies. It's all downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's not talk about the happening. Uh, we're gonna. So gosh, it's been nearly 2 hours. What a fun little time we've been having. I've cherry picked one question for the very end simply because it's quite out there and might be interesting to ask. So I'm gonna save that. Although it's easy to spot. But before we do our little proper wrap up, first of all, I'd like to properly thank and congratulate Brad for becoming, I mean, a new author. He's at a book signing now at one of his local bookstores. I mean, it's incredible to see. You know what I mean? Like I read his, I read I've read a couple of his Reddit stories now, naturally, but I mean that's how our relationship began with Reddit. Which again, we brought up a few times. That's where he's posted a lot of his stuff. That's where he's done a lot of his early learning with the writing experience. And look at where it's gotten him now. It's what an incredible time. So thank you, Bradley, for doing all this, doing all these amazing stories, all these amazing ideas, and for reaching out, writing me the lovely note in the book. I mean, just it's incredible. It's always such a lovely experience to be able to really get to know people and to really connect with them in such a way. And I really hope you've had a good time, because I know I've had a fantastic time. This has been super
great,
super fun. And so you yourselves can buy this book. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some pictures again. Barnes & Noble website is one of the places you can buy it from. Or if you, like me, maybe not always in the United States, you can also buy it through Amazon. And yes, they do deliver it to most countries. Do not worry. Where the Streetlight Ends. Don't forget it. Although I do have links in the description below, so don't worry. You'll always find them. So, another random little topic before we hit the final silly question, Brad. Where can people support you? Where can they find you? You mentioned a website and things of that kind of nature. Where would you like people to support you?
Gosh, that is a good question. Originally, this book was started through a Kickstarter. That's probably not going to happen with future work. It was just to make sure I had authentic art done. You know, art costs money, so I wanted to make sure we had the funds for that. So if you want to support me, again, just get the book, review it. Reviews help so much. They really do. Like I've gotten a lot of good word of mouth from quite a few people, but not a lot of written reviews. But if you know anybody that might be interested, feel free to share it. If you have any questions for me or want to ask anything or chit chat about horror stuff in general, I can talk forever about it. You can find me on Instagram. I think, and if you go to my website, there has a link to that, to my Instagram as well. Any future works I do will be up to date there. I have a blog in there that I plan on kind of just keeping up to date with whatever silly stuff goes through my brain. So those are probably the best avenues.
Excellent. And any relevant links that I don't have in the description, I will make sure we get in this description, so that no matter what, you can find all of these things that we've mentioned down below. Just keep it really simple for everybody. So before we go and roll credits, Bradley, Jeffrey and Luke Cuddle want to know your opinions on Skibidi Toilet.
Ooh. I don't think we have another 2 hours that I can dedicate to that.
I'm surprised that you have that many. I have my own personal opinions about it, even though I've not even seen it.
I have never seen it. My kids have introduced me to it. And from what I understand, freaking Michael Bay is going to be doing a Skibidi Toilet movie. So I'm just like, cinema is dead. It's all over. We've lost.
And I've heard apparently the story is incredibly elaborate. And I'm like, is it? Because it doesn't look like it is.
There's like a whole war story going on with it. And it's a head in the toilet.
How...
So again, if you're afraid of having your ideas out there, just know that this guy is probably a millionaire, whoever invented Skibidi Toilet. So
there's
no such thing as a bad idea.
No, exactly. Again, they got merch for it, of the heads in toilets. And I'm sitting here like, you're telling me kids are at the store and they see this and they go, that's what I want to cuddle with tonight. A stuffed toilet with a head in it. Like, what are you talking about? I do not understand. And maybe one day I'll inevitably see it. I'm probably going to do my best to never see it. But maybe if there's enough pressure, I'll finally give in. And then maybe my eyes will open and I'll go, I can't believe I slept on this. But I get the weird feeling that even after I see it, I'm still going to be like, I just don't get it. I just don't get the hype.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg could direct a Skibidi Toilet movie, and I still would be like, I'm not seeing it. Tom Hanks in it, I don't care. I'm not investing in it.
Tom Hanks' head in all the toilets. Yeah, that'd be. Oh, God. I don't know, man. I maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know, but I don't see the appeal. Skibbity stream. Look again. If you guys beg enough, maybe, but I don't know if I'm gonna do it. It's also, I think they have a lot of hardcore copyright things, so it's not like I can really watch it on stream. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah, good luck with that.
It's probably not happening. But you guys can always ask. You can always ask. Well, Bradley, this has been a fantastic fun time. I've had such a great time. I mean, reading the story with you and asking you all these fun questions, really getting to pick your brain, and I hope you've had a great time with us, man. This has been a super pleasure, really having you.
No, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for hosting this. This has been great. And thank you, everybody who's watched and asked questions. It means a lot. And I hope you guys had as much fun as we did.
Absolutely. And don't worry, I have a really funny feeling that Brad and I are, we're going to keep in touch. Because I get the feeling there'll be more stories, there'll be more works. And who knows? Who knows what kind of collaborations might come from that? We really hope you've had a great time with us, guys. Thank you so very much. But it's like 2:30 in the morning for me, so I'm going to go ahead and roll credits.